Welcome back. Ali Ndume has been removed from his position for speaking up, it is said. The Nigerian Senate removed Ali Ndume from his position as the Senate's chief whip for making unguarded utterances that are against the federal government. Now, this is according to a letter from Abdullahi Ganduje, the national chairman of the APC, and Bashir Ajibola, the party secretary to the Senate.
Now, last week, Ali Ndume told journalists that President Tinubu has been caged in the presidential villa, that some forces are preventing well-meaning Nigerians and people in government from physically discussing the truth with him. He claimed that the situation did not allow the president to know that many Nigerians are hungry. Clearly, Ali Ndume's comments maybe rubbed the ruling party the wrong way, as Ndume has now been replaced by Senator Tahir Monguno from Borno North local government area. Now, joining us is public affairs analyst Jide Johnson and National Publicity Secretary for Parliamentary Advocacy Network, Dominic Alancha, who will be joining us in a bit. Jide Johnson, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you.
All right. Ali Ndume's statements, first of all, a lot of, people applauded him, when they saw that interview. Some of the things that he said, that is, he struggles to see Mr. President. The people around Mr. President seem to be shielding him from the truth and from understanding the true situation, in Nigeria. So, two things that I want you to respond to. First of all, your reactions when you heard that he had now been removed as the chief whip, and then second, is that a good enough excuse to say that the president is being shielded from seeing the truth about what's going on with Nigerians?
Well, first, let's look at it from the second angle. Every president in Nigeria, we've always heard about the issue of this cabal.
Yep.
And this protective shield around the president and people not getting access to the president in order for them to get to know about the reality of things that is happening around their government. And we have seen over time that outside of government, a lot of presidents have come to realize that they were far away from reality of what is happening in the larger side. And I think that's the picture that Ali Ndume is talking about. Now let's come to Ali Ndume's role and responsibility and the party discipline issue. One, Ali Ndume is the chief whip and what's the role of the chief whip? The chief whip is to enforce party discipline and ensure that every member of the party, every member of the Senate votes according to a party policy and the party position. So as the chief whip, who is the chief enforcer of the party's discipline and policies in the Senate, that shouldn't come from him in terms of the responsibility and the job description of the role he's playing as the chief whip. There is a term which is used in legislative term, when you go contrary to the party position, they call it lose the whip, and then that means that you'll be expelled from the party. So he's aware of the trappings of the office in which he's holding. So when the chief whip lose the whip, then he needs to be whipped. And that, I think that's what the party has done. But there are issues which he raised. We talked to the larger issues of democratic institution that we have in Nigeria. If you have a party, if you have a structure, if you have a government in which the chief whip, who happens to be a principal officer of the party in the National Assembly, does not have access to the president of the Federal Republic, it tells that something is wrong with the structure of government that we practice in Nigeria. And I think that's the larger picture. We should look beyond the removal of Ali Ndume as the Senate chief whip, or his removal as the vice chairman of appropriation committee, but look at the larger issue in terms of what type of structure do we have for governance in Nigeria. Because if you look at these parties, what is the structure that is put in place for policy exchange between the legislature and the executive in terms of driving public governance in Nigeria? You see that in most cases, the executive is running at one end, the legislature is running at one end. And that's why we have not been able to get deliverables of democracy in, and that's the picture Nigerians should talk to. If you look at the constitution of the party, in the constitution of the party, there's what is called the national caucus of the party, in which you have the president, the president, the speaker, if the party produces the president, the speaker, the Senate president, and all of this, for them to come together at the party level to have an harmonious agreement as regards what will be the policy of the government. But what we have seen in Nigeria is the failure of the party system, because the national chairman who should have provided the leverage through which the legislature and the executive will interface in order for them to have a common ground, didn't provide that.
But I like that you respond. There's some other thing that I asked. Is that we've heard this excuse before, this whole idea of a cabal, and the whole idea of the president is not aware of what the reality of Nigerians, is. Is that going to be a good enough excuse to give any Nigerian president after 4 years to say that, oh, he didn't know because he was being shielded?
No, it falls on the purview of the president. You know what FDR, one of the famous American presidents, said? He said, the buck stops on my table. Now, it's the responsibility of the president to put in place structures and systems that allows him to know the reality of what is happening in Nigeria. Not for him to be within the cocoon of the presidency, of Aso Rock or his presidential jet. So it's, at the end of the day, it is not Ndume's administration. It is not Ganduje's administration. It is Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. And that's the reality in which most chief executives don't understand. Now, your aides might shield you. You see, the most important thing about leadership is about being open to criticism, being open to constructive criticism. Now, a leader should not be interested in hearing what he needs to, what he wants to hear. He should be interested in hearing what he needs to hear. He should be interested in allowing people to tell him the truth. And we say the truth is bitter. And
okay. We'll still explore this conversation further. We're joined today again by the Publicity Secretary for the Parliamentary Advocacy Network, Dominic Alancha. He's the National Publicity Secretary. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Alancha. You've heard the conversation and the point of view of Jide Johnson. What are your thoughts? First of all, do you think that there was some element of truth to what was being said by Ali Ndume? And do you approve of the manner in which it has been handled? Yes.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and good morning, Nigerians. I think your caption really captured it very well. For me, it's an unguarded, utterance or statement, coming from a high-ranking member of the National Assembly, Senator Ali Ndume, stating the obvious. Because what Senator Ali Ndume said is the obvious, the reality we have found ourselves, in. And let me say at this point that truly it's not about Ganduje administration, it's not about, it's not also about Tinubu administration, it's about APC administration. So for me, the way and manner he stated the obvious was the issue. He's a high-ranking member of the National Assembly. Every sitting they have caucus meeting or leadership meeting before they goes into, sitting. Why not raise some of these concerns there before coming out to the media? Even though he said that, yes, he was encouraged by his constituent because he's representing the people to go and grant that interview. I think that he made a mistake, by going outrightly or directly, to the media, to state some of those things that he mentioned. Having stated that, he's not, in a way helping the party because he's demarketing the party. That is the issue, and that is what led to the leadership of the party under the able leadership of His Excellency, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, to write to the Senate to say that he should be sacked, he should be relieved of his position as the chief whip. Again, like we have to be very objective about this because it's a very dicey situation that diplomacy is highly required. Ndume have stated obvious, but the action of the Senate has portrayed them as a rubber stamp. I don't think that the way and manner they relieved him of his position is quite okay, because believe me, whether you like it or not, Nigerians are with Ali Ndume on this. But like I said, the way and manner he went about it, if I were in his shoe, I would have written a personal letter first to the president or even to the leadership of the party to say, this is what is happening under this administration, and it's not all going well. Nigerians are hungry. Some of these things would demarket our party. Was he able to do that, or has he ever done that? If he has not done that, and he went directly to the media to grant that interview, I think it is wrong. It is demarketing to the party, and it's not ethical. You know, as a high-ranking member of the Senate, he should have also raised this issue, like I said, at the caucus meeting of the National Assembly of leadership, so that they could find a way to communicate him, to say that the president is not accessible, you know, to members of the National Assembly or ministers. I doubt it. You know, we have seen in the past where, you know, the president have granted audience to members of the National Assembly, you know, where they discuss one or two national issues, you know.
Well,
so
I think, Mr. Alancha, I think
the channel of the National Assembly to reach out to the president.
Yeah, Mr. Alancha, I think he was describing. Kindly hold on, Mr. Alancha.
Stated obvious.
All right. I think I don't think the situation is that Mr. President hasn't seen or met with members of National Assembly at all. I think he also tried to establish, you know, the fact that he himself, Ali Ndume, has only met with Mr. President, or I think he only had one encounter with him outside official, you know, duties. And he said that during former President Olusegun Obasanjo's time, if you wanted to see Mr. President at any time, within a 24-hour time frame, you would have access to him, which is not the case now, and that's what he was pointing out.
There are processes in meeting the president. There are channels, there are protocols, you know, that you need to go through for you to be able to meet with the president. First of all, what are you bringing to the table? What are you coming to discuss, you know, with the president? The chief of there is there. If there is clearly, you know, reason for you to see the president, you will see him. But if there are no reasons for you to see the president,
but it is within
this issue that
Mr. Alancha, it is within Ali Ndume's.
I think he should have gone through the leadership, you know, of the party. I mean, of the National Assembly or the party, to communicate to the president that this is the reality Nigerians are facing. That this is what is happening, you know, in the country. You see, Ali Ndume cannot also exonerate himself from the challenges Nigeria is going through. He has been in the National Assembly since 1999 till date. If I'm not mistaken, I stand to be corrected.
Yeah.
You know,
all right, hold on. I wanted to just chip in.
Completely from that.
Mr. Alancha, hold on. I wanted to just mention that, yes, there are processes with which you can see Mr. President, but it is within Ali Ndume's rights as a person, as a, you know, member of the National Assembly, as a member of the APC, to express how he feels about his proximity to Mr. President. And if he feels that even all those pathways through which you can reach out to Mr. President are not working, then he can also state it. You know, it's not necessarily that he's maybe he's overreacting or he's lying. And
just to, you know...
He's simply just stated the way that it is, you know, for himself.
Before you respond, just to add to what he said, we cannot say categorically that he hasn't tried all the other options to get across to the president,
that as well.
And all of that failed before he resorted to this unguarded utterance reference.
There's that as well. But hold on, let's bring back Jide Johnson. Kindly hold on, Mr. Alancha. Kindly hold on, please. All right, we have another guest, Jide Johnson. You know, I would like that you also share your thoughts on other things that he said. He described the government as a government running on a kakistocracy and kleptocracy, which were two words that he used during that interview.
Well, if you look at the image we saw, the visuals we shared, when he talked about kakistocracy,
yes,
you see sitting behind the president, wearing the military uniform, is the aide-de-camp to the president. Have you ever seen that in any other climate? Beside him is the National Security Advisor.
Is that a military?
And that speaks to the narrative of which Ali Ndume is talking about. Now, if Ali Ndume as the chief whip and one of the high-ranking member, because my colleague said he's been in the Senate since 1999, because what you need in the legislature is actually experience. That's what goes for the legislature. And you could see that he did a comparison of different administrations in terms of access. So if Ali Ndume, a high-ranking member of the APC and part and parcel of the leadership of APC in the Senate, could not assess the president, who are those that are having access to the president? These are the key questions you need to ask, because there must be an interface between the legislature and the executive. And he's complaining about, and I'm speaking even to the National Assembly themselves, they themselves should think twice before they elect the leadership of the Senate, because he talks about the failure of those that are in charge of the National Assembly in creating access. Because if they have elected somebody that is proactive, somebody that is independent, somebody that represents, that established the independence of the legislature, they will have been able to assert their role and they could get access to the president. You know, my colleague was saying that they should go to the chief of staff. Can you imagine? It is contrary to the principles and the tenets of democracy. We are not talking about monarchical government. We are not talking about military government. You are talking about democratic government. And each of these individuals are elected and are given mandate. Now, Ali Ndume is not acting as Ali Ndume, the senator representing Borno South. Ali Ndume is acting in his capacity as the chief whip of the National Assembly. So the personality that he carries, the responsibility that he carries, should give him access to the president within the time frame of 48 hours. And those are the issues. Other issues which he spoke about the hunger, about what is in life, they are the reality of life. And in most cases, if you're, okay, look at it. How do you, when the executive are campaigning for office, what do? They move closer to the people. You can access them, you can get to them. But the moment they are elected, they are shielded. That's the reality. Look at the security that surrounds them. Look at the type of vehicles. The cars they drive are screened. Are they not screened? And they drive at what? At fast speed. So they don't even see what is even going on the street. And they don't even have access to what is going on, to the truth. They have aides that are feeding them with wrong information. And that's what Ali Ndume is speaking to. But it's the manner of approach. Because as a key member of the party, as a strong member of the National Assembly, there are other channels. Right. As he explored, like my colleague pointed out, he could have written a letter. He could have adopted the Obasanjo approach. After he has written his letter and they didn't attend to his letter, he makes his letter public. And
also, do you think that it's maybe, I don't know, how do you foresee that he will handle it? I'm seeing here that he's been made to chair the Senate Committee on Tourism.
You should know that I think the way the National Assembly went about dealing with this issue, it's not appropriate. I think that everybody deserves fair hearing. I think that this is the first infraction he's committing, and I think that he should have been given an opportunity to explain himself, and disciplinary action should have been taken by the Senate, not an extraneous body. Not an extraneous body like the national chairman writing that he was not elected as the chief whip by the party. Yeah. He was elected by his members. They should have given the institution of the National Assembly to at least enforce some disciplinary measures before it gets to the party. Yeah. Those are the things that I think that are wrong with our system. And until you put in the right system, we don't get the right result. Those are the issues that are wrong with public governance in Nigeria.
All right, let's bring back Dominic Alancha. You know, and I want you to also respond to something that I asked earlier about his allegations that, or his views that the government is a government of kakistocracy, which is a government run by the least qualified and the most unscrupulous citizens, and also a government of kleptocracy, referred to as a thievocracy, basically a government run by a lot of corrupt leaders. What are your views on those two terms used to describe the current government?
Well, like I said, you know, I've been issued that Ali Ndume actually stated the obvious. And that is to say that I agree with what he said. And like my friend rightly said there, the manner of approach was quite wrong. As a high-ranking member of the party, as a high-ranking member of the National Assembly, he shouldn't have just gone directly to the media to vituperate, you know, make those unguarded utterances that he made. For me, I think he stated the obvious. Sincerely speaking, even before Ali Ndume comes out to say some of these things, most of us have questioned the competence and the capacity of those around Mr. President, talking about the ministers, because some of them seems not to understand the vision and mission of the renewed hope, you know, administration. You know, so if you look at what Ndume is saying, he's stating the obvious, he's telling the truth, but the manner in which he went about it is the issues. Nigerians are with him on this thing, you know, on what he said, but he shouldn't have just gone directly to the media to state it. That's why I said he should have gone through the leadership of the party, you know, because both Ndume and the president are there under the platform of the All Progressive Congress. What Ali Ndume went to the media to do is to demarket the party, and that is why the party woke up to say, no, it's demarketing the party that brought him there based on the privileged position he has as the senator and chief whip, remove him. And that is what they did. But you see, again, I am not also in support of removing him as the chief whip. He's rather making the situation worse. You know, right now he will attract the sympathy of Nigeria. I think, you know, the Senate should have interfaced with him, and then if there is a way he should stand down apology, he should do that. He should have, you know, they should have had to do that. But for them to call him, you know, and then, you know, remove him from that position, I think is going to attract a lot of sympathy from Nigerians, and it's as possible. Now, let me also say about, you know, personal, because he's not talking on the level of assessing the president on personal ground. If it is on personal ground, that is why I said that there are processes you must go through. The chief of staff is the gatekeeper to the president. Every appointment is scheduled by the chief of staff. So there is nothing wrong for him to have approached the chief of staff to say, I want to see Mr. President and bring his attention so issues. There is nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think he also...
see the president today, the gatekeeper is the chief of staff, and you must route your appointment to him for you to see, you know, the chief of staff,
you know,
Mr. President.
I'm sure in that interview he also spoke about the chief of staff. I think he mentioned him in that interview as also possibly one of the hindrances to gaining access to Mr. President. I need to be sure, but we need to wrap up here. Jide Johnson, I want you to once again speak on what this means if the Senate President receiving a letter from the APC couldn't defend his fellow senator who has the freedom to express himself.
I've said it earlier, and I think that it's important moving forward that senators that were elected should be able to assert the independence of the legislature.
So bear in mind, not long ago, a senator was suspended for also...
Yeah,
talking about the budget.
Speaks to one of the talking points which you raised, the intolerance of criticism. And we say this, in democracy, majority will have their way, minority will have their say. And it's important for us to allow any culture that does not tolerate dissent, is not ready for growth. All of us cannot sleep and put our eyes together. So you must put in place a culture whereby people can express dissent. And dissent enables you to evaluate whatever you are doing, whether you're on the right track or you're on the wrong track. And I think that this present administration need to work on the level of tolerance to criticism.
Absolutely.
Because for them to move forward, they need to understand that they must have divergent view in order to review whatever steps they are taking. And it's very, very important. And the chief of staff has a role. A lot of talk has gotten to the office of the chief of staff with respect to not even coming from Ndume alone. Yeah. You have had it from Grapevine and the rest of it. And I think the chief of staff has a role to play whether the president is successful or is not successful. Because access to the president is important.
Mr. Alancha, thank you for your time with us. Jide Johnson, thank you for your time.